When Brian Kelly left Notre Dame to take the head coaching job at LSU, the reasoning behind him making this move was that he was kind of capped in terms of what he could do at Notre Dame. The furthest he could take Notre Dame football was to a national championship. He had a hard time being able to recruit the blue chip talent that you need to be able to win the Natty down there in South Bend. And him making the jump from Notre Dame to LSU was supposed to be a big time move because we know that Brian Kelly is a pretty solid coach. He can get you to 8-9 wins consistently. The question is, can he make you a consistent national championship contender? And so far, throughout his first couple of years at LSU, the furthest this team has went under Brian Kelly up to this point was losing to Georgia in the SEC championship his first year. I mean, last year, not only did you have the Heisman Trophy winner in Jaden Daniels, but you had Brian Thomas Jr., Malik Neighbors, and you had one of college football's most explosive offenses, and all you were able to do was win 9 games. 2023 was a big letdown year for LSU considering the amount of NFL talent that they had on that squad. And this year, you start off with the sour taste in your mouth because you lost 27-20 to USC, a team that you were favored to beat and the team that most people gave you the edge over when it came to coaching and talent. And the reason why LSU fell to USC was not because Garrett Nussmeier got outplayed by Miller Moss. And what really irks me about Brian Kelly is that he doesn't take accountability. He always has to throw his players under the bus, or he always has to play the blame game. There's always some excuse that he has for why he's not able to do it, for why he's not able to get it done. And after that lost to USC in his post-game press conference, he was throwing the temper tantrum. He was punching the desk. I mean, what are you doing all this extra shit for? He took accountability when he said that he needs to be a better coach. But then he comes out and says that Miller Moss outplayed Garrett Nussmeier. How you going to take accountability and then right after go ahead and deflect blame on Garrett Nussmeier, your starting quarterback? He was not the reason why LSU lost this game. Garrett Nussmeier played as perfect as a game as you could play. What costed LSU this game was the conservative vanilla play calling that we saw out of this team once they got inside of the red area. That was the difference between them winning and losing this game. If they were able to have better execution inside of the 20 and they were able to take advantage of getting into that area of the field, this probably is a game that they win by maybe a touchdown. Now with Brian Kelly losing to USC, he is now 0-3 in first week openers. And not only is he 0-3 against week 1 games, but he now has lost 5 out of his last 6 games against top 25 teams. And overall, Brian Kelly in big games oftentimes comes up short. It was the same problem that he had at Notre Dame. How many big-time wins against elite teams did Brian Kelly get when he was coaching the Fighting Irish? Not too many. His excuse was, well, we're not able to recruit the kinds of athletes that those teams that we keep losing to are able to have. Well, why is it that as soon as you leave Notre Dame, the recruiting starts to flourish under Marcus Freeman, who has never been a head coach before? Notre Dame is recruiting at the highest level that they've ever had in the history of their program right now. I don't see Marcus Freeman making excuses for why Notre Dame recruiting can't be better. You know, there are plenty of coaches in the SEC that have done more with less. There's not a single coach that does less with more than what Brian Kelly has done so far. I mean, Kalen DeBoer in 2 years at Washington went 25-3 and led them to a national championship in his second season. Mike Elko was winning at Duke. You have two of these same coaches in the same conference as Brian Kelly, but yet for some reason he keeps having all the excuses for why he can't get LSU to a SEC championship. And I'm not talking about making an appearance in the SEC title. I'm talking about hoisting that SEC championship title. Why is it that LSU has yet to appear in the college football playoffs? And even with this thing expanding to 12 teams, I still don't see LSU getting in. I feel they're going to have a couple of upset losses. I don't see them beating Oklahoma. I don't see them beating Alabama with Kalen DeBoer being the better head coach. What this game against USC showed about Brian Kelly is that he went from being a big fish in the small pond at Notre Dame to becoming a small fish in the ocean that is the SEC. There are more elite coaches in this conference now than what there were when he first arrived in Baton Rouge. Now you got about half of college football's top 15 coaches in one conference. It's easy to consistently have success at a school like Notre Dame when you can avoid having to schedule tough teams week after week, and your schedule is relatively manageable compared to the gauntlet that is the Southeastern Conference. Based off what Brian Kelly has done the last couple of years, at least the last 5 or 6, I don't see anything on his resume that shows that he's a top 5 or even a top 10 head coach. Brian Kelly's biggest achievement was Notre Dame sneaking into the BCS National Championship nearly a decade ago when they had the star linebacker that was a Heisman finalist with the fake girlfriend. What was his name? Manti Te'o. That Notre Dame team got absolutely blitzed by Bama in that championship game that year. And ever since then, we've never seen Brian Kelly be able to get to that game again. Eventually, you can make so many excuses until you have no more to make. At Notre Dame, the reason why you couldn't win was you couldn't recruit. You weren't able to get the necessary high-end talent that you need to be able to be a natty contender. That was understandable until I saw Marcus Freeman come in there and out-recruit you. You get the LSU, and I mean, even their previous head coach, Ed Orgeron, was able to do more than what Brian Kelly has done at this point of his career there. I mean, for as bad as what Ed Orgeron was, at least he was able to get LSU a national championship. It was one of the greatest teams all time, and we know he was carried by the coaches that he hired and Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, and all of the other NFL players that they had on that team. But you still have to give Ed Orgeron credit for assembling a perfect storm. Why can't Brian Kelly do the same thing? It's not like Brian Kelly, when he first got to LSU, he had to rebuild the program. Recruiting was still pretty good. LSU is still recruiting at a high level. LSU, under Brian Kelly, still brings in elite, highly ranked recruiting classes. So talent isn't the reason why LSU's losing these big-time games. I mean, last year your defense was historically bad, but that was your fault because you hired a bad defensive coordinator. And with you throwing your players under the bus, you're still not taking accountability for what you need to do as a head coach to get this program to that next level. You know, it's one thing to take accountability, but it's another thing to say, I need to be better as a head coach, and then throw your star quarterback under the bus. All people were saying about Gunnar Nussmeier on social media was that this dude is a stud. He's a future NFL quarterback. His dad currently coaches in the NFL right now. He comes from a football family. He has a really high understanding of the game, and there really wasn't a gap in skill between Garrett, and Miller Moss. They both were on the same level. They both had outstanding games. What costed LSU is that they got conservative in the red zone. And Brian Kelly is pretty conservative as a head coach. Sometimes he takes a dice roll here and there, but he mostly plays things safe. That's why LSU lost to USC. Brian Kelly got outcoached by Lincoln Riley. And the more I see of this Brian Kelly experiment at LSU, the more I start to view him more and more as being overrated. I know a lot of y'all like to ask, well, if Brian Kelly is overrated, JT, where is he rated? He's not a top 10 coach. I'll tell you that for sure. That's where a lot of people seem to have him rated as. And he nowhere, in my eyes, is a top 10 coach. If anything, he's a top 20 coach. I can name you about 10 coaches that I would take over Brian Kelly. I'm not going to name them right now because we don't got enough time to do that. But it seems like Brian Kelly is not maximizing the resources and talent that's available down there in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. The sole reason why there was so much excitement around Brian Kelly being LSU's head coach is that you felt like he was being held back by the limitations of coaching at Notre Dame. But we've seen Marcus Freeman with those same limitations be able to do more than what Brian Kelly ever did. And he even went on the road and got a big win against Texas A&M in College Station. I mean, Brian Kelly, the excuses for him are starting to run out in my eyes. Is he a shitty coach? No, but he's not an elite coach. He's definitely not a top 10 coach like how many people have him rated as. And that's why LSU is underachieving. He's a top 10 coach, but you don't have no conference championships to show for it. You have 0 playoff appearances, having a Heisman Trophy winner and 2 first-round wide receivers who he was slinging the football to. This is unacceptable, and LSU fans should be expecting way more out of a coach that has the resume that Brian Kelly has.